It is believed to be the world's biggest and most influential tech conference. Surge 2016 received an overwhelming response from India's IT and startup hub with an attendance of close to 500 startups and 250 investors from over 70 countries.
I have with me here Paddy Cosgrave, the founder of Surge and clearly the man of the hour. Paddy, welcome to India. Is this your first time in Bangalore? How are you finding it?
It's my second time in Bangalore. I'm having just so much fun. It's incredible. The event is beyond anything we expected.
Awesome. So tell us what made you decide to bring Surge to India this year?
So over the last 4 years, the number of Indian entrepreneurs and investors flying all the way from India to Dublin, Ireland, has increased almost exponentially. So about 6 months ago, I tweeted out saying, hey, thinking maybe of doing a conference in India, not sure if we should, and if we should, where? And then Sachin Bansal, the CEO and founder of Flipkart, just responded and said, you absolutely should, and Bangalore is going to be the city, and the rest is history.
So in terms of a startup ecosystem, what do you think India has gotten right?
Well, it's just huge. I come from a country with 4.2 million people. I mean, the city alone has 3 times that population, and it has an incredible education system. So for many years, the secret inside most Silicon Valley tech companies was Indian engineers who were educated in IITs here. They left and they helped build some incredible companies. I mean, look at the CEOs of some of the most important companies in Silicon Valley and in the United States now. They're Indian CEOs. And I think what you're seeing is many of those are returning, and many of those who traditionally left are staying. And together they're just building some incredible companies. I mentioned Flipkart, but there are many others.
What, according to you, what more could be done to foster sort of more entrepreneurship in our country?
Well, I think of Europe, and I think, okay, Europe's got 500 million people. How many great tech companies has it built over the last 20 years? And the answer is very, very little. And then I arrive in Bangalore again, and I'm in traffic, and I'm wondering, why is India suddenly producing so many interesting and great tech companies? And I just think I almost think it must be down to driving. Indians drive with so much entrepreneurial spirit. They're always looking for the next opportunity. In Europe, we've become so rigid and stale. Everything is by the book. But to be a great entrepreneur, you've got to throw out the rule book and think outside the box. And that's happening here, and I hope it never changes, because if it does change, you might go the way of Europe, where people are just not as creative as they once were.
Right. And finally, what do you believe are the key differences between the Indian startup ecosystem and startup ecosystems in the US, Israel, and what do you think that some of the lessons are that India can learn from them?
So I think what's exciting is that the ecosystem is younger in India. It's been happening in Silicon Valley for many decades. What's also particularly exciting is that this is a true mobile-first market. Most people are getting online on smartphones for the very first time. That was not the case in the United States. And that opens up possibilities for innovation that I don't think we've seen elsewhere in the world. And so that gets me very excited as to what the next 5 years holds for India.
Many of the attendees and speakers at Surge included stalwarts and well-known names from India's startup ecosystem. And while the main discussion and emphasis was on fostering entrepreneurship in the country, many startup founders and investors voiced their expectations for the upcoming budget.
I have here with me Veer Kashyap, co-founder of babajob.com. Hi Veer, how are you finding today at Surge 2016?
Yeah, it's been great to be here. The energy is you can feel the energy and see a lot of people from around the world. Like I just heard the founder of Duolingo talk about how he got 100 million downloads by making the user interface super simple. Met a lot of interesting people from around the world, so it's good to see this energy in the city.
Now, the Invest Karnataka Global Meet 2016 had just ended, and you had mentioned to me earlier that you had just signed an MOU with the government of Karnataka. So tell us a little bit.
Yeah, we basically had approached the government to tell them about what we're doing in helping people get better jobs. And so we were able to formalize an MOU with the state government to, anytime they're talking about jobs, they will include Baba Job as one channel of how people can access information about jobs. So we're excited to see the government embracing technology and startups on this level.
So now we're at Surge, a whole bunch of startups around us. Tell us what you feel about 2016. What do you think that are some of the trends or innovations that are going to emerge from the Indian startup ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we'll see a greater emphasis as a bunch of, from actually the earlier granting of these payment licenses, Now I think those will start to come into effect. So I think we should see some great innovations in banking and payments that will allow a lot more people to have access to financial services. I think that'll be very exciting and open up a whole range of new possibilities. I think some of the new initiatives announced in January from the Startup India event should get put into action in the government, in the new budget that's being announced at the end of this month. And so being actually to see those things take effect will be very exciting.
Now, speaking specifically about Baba Job and HR startups and things in the same space, what do you think 2016 will be like for this space and for you guys in particular?
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of the innovations around that have affected a lot of other industries come more into our space, including like, the machine learning and using big data analysis tools to help people connect with the best candidates should be a theme. Including, I think a big theme for us is also local language, making sure that content is available in local language as the next 100 million people come online in India who are not necessarily native English speakers. I think local language content will become, even more on the front. It's been talked about for a long time, but I think it'll become on the forefront for a lot of different companies, including ours, as a big priority. And so, I think payments, local language will be some of the things we'll see, including the machine learning and big data analysis.
And finally, budget day is coming up. So,
Yeah.
as a startup, what are some of your expectations for the budget 2016-2017?
Yeah, we obviously, hopefully, some of the tax breaks that come in that have been talked about actually get actualized. We see a reduced burden on startups to pay tax in their early years. There's been some other talk also about even rationalizing service taxes and VAT and things like that. So those minutiae will be interesting to see in the budget how they actually come out, because I think the high-level pieces have all been shared, and the next 10 to 12 days we'll see how they actually get implemented, which will be obviously then we'll all talk to our chartered accountants and our partners and figure out how we can use it to grow the startup ecosystem faster.
I'm here with Raghav Gupta, head of BlaBlaCar India. Now, you've mentioned that you have presence in several other countries also. So, in comparison, comparing India to these countries, what differences do you see with special regard to the ride-sharing space in the Indian ecosystem?
Sure. I think one, at a very strategic level, in a lot of countries we are much cheaper than the existing modes of public transport. So for example, we could be 60-70% cheaper than train in Europe. In India we are a little cheaper or almost the same price as the train, but we are available. So in Europe we say you can travel cheaper, in India we say you can travel. So it's a fundamental strategic difference in terms of what we offer. Second, obviously trust and safety concerns in India are higher. So a lot of the features on our service are more to cater to that trust and safety concern. And third, given that mobile networks are not as reliable on a 3G, 4G basis, some of the product elements are lighter to be able to work in an Indian environment.
Do you see any sort of trends or innovations emerging from the ride-sharing space in 2016?
I think we will see quite a bit happening. Over the first year, we've seen education, awareness and initial usage. I think this year we will see a lot more usage build up on the platform. Also, we will work towards offering additional services that are relevant. So, as an example, in Europe, we offer insurance, additional insurance, and we offer roadside assistance, that anywhere in a country, if your car breaks down, we get you roadside assistance. If we can launch that in India, it will be phenomenal. So, we'll work towards launching some of these services.
And finally, Raghav, the budget is coming out, budget day is upon us very soon. What are your expectations from either the budget or the startup action plan that has been launched by the government?
So I have some thoughts which are not, I would say, specific to the budget, but maybe a little bit higher at a larger governmental level. Mainly 3 points. A lot of startups are online startups, right? We are an online startup. One of the core elements is the internet, the mobile network. The unfortunate part is that while 4G has been launched, 3G doesn't still work properly. So a very basic requirement for startups is that the networks need to work properly. The government needs to help us with that. Second, in the startup space, trust and safety in general in India is quite important, especially in our category. And being able to tap into certain government databases for e-KYC purposes would be very, very helpful. So if we can have members on our platform whose databases are verified electronically, that would be quite something. We are working with the government to launch some of these features soon, but I think that there's a lot more to be done. And third, I think there are lots of areas for startups as well, where because the concept is so new, there may not be existing regulation for that, right? The internet didn't exist when a lot of those regulations were written, and then a concept comes along, and that's a new concept. So again, we are engaging with the government on regulatory areas, but I think there is definitely a need for more focus and more speed of execution on that.
I have now with me Amit Somani from Prime Venture Partners. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs or young upcoming startups when just before they approach an investor? What are the kind of points that they should keep in mind for relationship building and such?
So I think you should be very, very clear about what problem are you solving for what customer. Certainly at the early stage, which we look at, that's the most important thing. Don't worry about anything else. The second thing is this a big market? Lastly, can you build a scalable offering and a real product that can serve this large market, right? So if you're solving a real problem for real customers, addressing a large market, and you have a solution that can solve it, that's all that that's music to an investor's ears.
Amit, tell us, as an early stage investor, what are some of the challenges that you guys face?
So, while entrepreneurship is booming, you just look around here, right, and thousands of startups. I feel like there's a lot of people who are really smart and capable doing sort of very Me Too, copycat sort of ideas, right? They're not trying to tackle big problems in a meaningful way. So obviously, just at a sheer volume, even for me to walk this floor, what are the 10 startups that I should really bother to meet from these 1,000, right? So the signal to noise ratio is very, very high. And unfortunately, some of them, and maybe many of them, are going to die, but there are going to be the new big winners from this lot as well.
So what do you think are some of the trends that you will see emerging in 2016? What's the next big thing that we should look out for?
I certainly think B2B will get back into vogue. There's been a lot of focus on consumer. In fact, even though my background is personally in consumer, but I think B2B will be back into vogue. Because real business, real revenue, real time to profitability. Another one that is interesting that we are bullish about is digital health. We see a lot of action happening in digital health, particularly in the Indian market. Another trend I would pick is applicability of sensors and sensor-related technologies. So I don't want to call it quote-unquote IoT, but really how do you apply the sensor technology to solve real-world problems, right?